Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Champions of Self podcast. I'm Ben Eden, your host, and today I get to welcome Dr. Catherine Wiberg from Walla Walla, Washington. Hello, Dr. Catherine. How are you?
I am doing great, Ben. Thank you so much. How's your day so far?
My day is going very well. Thank you. So, Dr. Catherine, why don't we get started by you telling us a bit more about who you are and what you do?
Well, I am a motivational speaker, and I am a women's empowerment coach and alignment consultant. What that means is that I work with women in two different areas. First, I work with women who see themselves as just something or to something. For example, just me, just a doctor, just a mom, or too much, too little, something of that nature, and help them to understand that they are not just anything, and to help them to reframe their understanding of themselves so they can rewrite their present and redesign their future. Then I also work with women who are in recognizable leadership roles and help them to recognize the strengths of their teams so that they may build and empower strength-based teams and understand their own leadership role better.
Very good. I'm glad you went over what you have on your LinkedIn: reframe, rewrite, and redesign. That's good. We're going to talk more about that in detail. But it's interesting what you mentioned about the people you work with, how they have these terms or labels or beliefs or whatever we want to call it of just or to. So they are people who have incredible potential, probably have done amazing things and will do amazing things, but that label we put on ourselves puts a cap on what we're able to do at the time, right?
Exactly. It's a diminishing of oneself, and I want to help people recognize that there's nothing to be diminished. There's nothing diminishing about them, I ought to say, that they are way more powerful than they give themselves credit, and they do things that other people can't, and that other people admire in them, and they can own that themselves and recognize that knowing that you do something well does not make you conceited. It makes you confident.
There you go. I like that. Now, from your perspective, what makes a person like this put that cap on themselves? I mean, why would anybody do that?
I have discovered, and including in my own journey, that it is much in our young formative years, that either it came from a trusted family member, it could have even been unintentionally, as in my case, it was primarily unintentional, or it could have come from a group of peers that the individual valued the peer's opinion, also in my own story. But it is, and it's a societal view. Often we hear in society, well, it's not okay to brag, and it's not okay to say that you do things well, and because then you're bragging. And as a result, we tend to see ourselves and say, well, oh, anybody could do that, when in reality, not anybody can, because you have your own perspective and your own strength from within. And I think it's a matter of exterior perceptions affecting our interior perceptions. And as you often have said, in fact, your focus, emotional pain. I think it is a result of emotional pain somewhere in somebody's life. And then all these individuals say, well, so-and-so thinks I'm not, or there must be something to, or any variation of that.
Interesting. Now you bring up something that we haven't really talked about in this podcast until now. The more exciting emotions, right? I don't like to say positive or negative, but these emotions of happiness or courage or confidence, like you said, that's interesting, because when we are good at something, we do have that feeling of, being proud or confident and saying, yeah, I am good at this, and I like how other people notice that I'm good at it. So you have this feeling of happiness and excitement. But like you said, sometimes, whether it's a flippant remark or an untimely response or whatever it may be, that can turn into a different type of feeling of embarrassment, or
Mm-hmm.
oops, I probably shouldn't have done that. So then we have this internal conflict with our emotions, like, well, I thought I was good at this, but maybe I shouldn't be, and I don't understand my feelings, and now it's like, well, I don't know, now maybe there's something wrong with me. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, which is something that I myself had to battle. And still, on occasion, I have to fight that. I've come to realize that confidence and conceit are not the same thing. And confidence is recognizing I do something well, and it's okay for me to do that well. And because I do it well, I can help other people. Conceit is saying, I do it well and you don't, and you will never do as well as I. And I think that conceit is more a sign of insecurity, and confidence is an ability to share the strengths that you have with others. Some
Yeah.
people might think they look the same, but if you get down to the deep root, they're not.
And that's an interesting point, because yeah, with conceit, it's more, I'm better than you, I'm separated from you, stay away, don't ruin me. Where
Mm-hmm.
confidence is more, hey, I realize how I can add, I can connect, and I can help, right?
That's exactly my perspective. Yep.
Ah, that's cool. So you keep alluding to this story of yours. Let's hear it.
Well, I have many portions of my story, and this is something that I've really thought about before we had this conversation so that I could choose the right portion of my story to benefit your audience. I think I'm going to touch lightly on my very early life and then a little bit more on my later. I was born ill, and my older brother, who is 3 years older than I am, only lived for 3 weeks. He was born with the same illness. I was less severely ill. As a result, a couple of different things happened in the dynamics of my parents. My father spoke about me in past tense for the first year of my life. He shared this with me after I was 20 years old. But he would be holding me and talk about me in past tense, and he struggled to bond. My mother, on the other hand, constantly hovered and make sure that everything is fine, and always very aware and treated me as fragile and very, very careful. Now, in the midst of many other things, my parents divorced when I was 5. My mother remarried when I was 6. My father's on wife number 5, but this is also wife number final. They've been married now for 14 years, and okay. I'm thrilled with their relationship. But the dynamics of both of those marriage relationships that I saw have not all been healthy. And then as a child of divorced parents, children at age 5 start to think it's all their fault. Even though it's not, it is the mindset of a 5-year-old. So I had that. And then, my parents are all 3 of my parents are wonderful people. They don't always remember that within themselves. But that created an interesting emotional dynamic within myself. Now, when I was in 6th grade, I had a friend who decided she wanted to help me be better than I was. She chose to help me be better by telling me everything I did wrong. Everything that was a weakness, everything that she didn't like about me, so that I could learn and I could be better. Well, after a 15-minute recess, she let me know that there was more, but this was what I could work on.
Wow.
Well, an insecure 12-year-old starts to feel like a little ball of goo and a lot of weakness. So I had that along with just being an adolescent. And then in 9th grade, I had an English teacher. Way more than an English teacher. In fact, one of my main sheroes of the world. It's a phrase, a term that she coined that I just love.
Hmm.
That she is more than an English teacher. She is a life coach and was a life coach before life coach was a title or a thing. She talked about the ability to create ourselves and to decide who we wanted to be and to choose how we were going to approach life in spite of or because of our life circumstances to that point. At that moment, I decided I went to high school, or rather I went to elementary and junior high school with all the same kids my whole life. And I had emotional baggage tied to that.
Mm-hmm.
I also went by the name Kathy. And I decided I'm going to go to a high school for 10th through 12th grade where absolutely nobody knows me. And I'm going to go by Catherine. I'm going to step into my given name. And I'm going to become the person that I want to be around and the person that I want to be. And I'm going to learn to be comfortable in my own skin. And it made all the difference in the world. Now, I still had many years of being comfortable in my skin, looking at my past, learning from my past, understanding where other people in my past had their emotional challenges and their mental roadblocks that they had to overcome, and deciding how I was going to deal with that. And this is where I talk so much about reframe, rewrite, redesign, because I learned through, it wasn't on my own. There are many, many people who have helped me with this, but I learned how to reframe my past and to look at it from a different perspective and to look at myself in comparison with others in a different way from the way I'd ever done it before. Normally, when we compare ourselves to others, we look at what we don't do well that they do well, and we beat ourselves over the head and we say,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, I'll never be as good. I started to look at the people I most admired in all facets of my life and look at what I admired about them and where I'd seen that happen, and then look at myself and say, have I done any of those things? Do I have that gift? Can I develop this more? And I began to see that many of the things I admired in other people, I had already been developing in myself. And that gave me the courage to recognize, wow, I do some things really well. And it's okay that I do them well. And it's okay that I don't do everything well because that person does it well. And maybe that person will help me. Maybe I won't have to do it. And that person can do it. And we can be a team. And I got really excited about that. I had several stories there too. But it gave me the opportunity to rewrite what I'm doing right now to say, you know what? This made me who I am, but now I can decide who I am. It brought me here, but now I can choose.
Very good.
And that has made it so that I have redesigned my own future several times. And then I help other people to do the same. So that's a semi-synopsis of my story.
That's good. Thank you for sharing. A couple things that I wanted to highlight. You had mentioned a number of, let's say, events that happened from when you were barely born to when you were about 5 or 6, and then when you went to high school. And so the thing is, some people might think, well, do I have an emotional pain? And if I do, where did it come from? And yes, there's probably a chance that it came from some time in childhood, but there's also a possibility that it comes in the nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
Because everything happens as an event, and then we assign meaning to it, and an emotion comes because of that assigned meaning. So Absolutely. If we, even in this time of COVID, if we lost a job, that's a source of emotional pain, or at least can be.
Absolutely.
If we have some stress in the family, whatever time of life we're in, a death, a divorce, a broken friendship, maybe a goal that you were going after and it didn't happen, all sorts of sources that this emotional pain can come from. The thing that I try to teach and that you've learned is it's not so much the event that we need to focus on, because if we did, then people would say, well, I haven't experienced that event, so I have no right to feel the way that I do.
Mm-hmm.
All that does is tell your brain, oh, your emotions aren't valid and therefore you're dumb. That doesn't help.
I agree with you, because your emotions are always valid, and it's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel perplexed. It's okay to feel frustrated, no matter what event caused it. And you have to be able to recognize it and own it so you can do something with it.
Mm-hmm. And it's certainly a learning experience, because some might think, and I speak from experience, my goodness, I think, well, if I learn it once, I should have learned it and it should be done. So if I learned that I was angry and I got over it, I should be done. I should never be angry again. And then something happens and I'm angry. And then all of a sudden I say, why am I angry? I've already been through this. But the thing is, and there's a cool book that I'm reading right now. It talks about emotions very specifically, like anger and fear and grief and sadness. And it says, hey, it's part of your body already.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a message that's trying to be told to you. So listen to it, feel it, allow it to flow through you. Now, I like that word through.
Yes,
So it's not stuck, right? Whenever these events happen, like you mentioned, if we don't address them and we say, no, I already learned it, I don't want to feel it, whatever, then it's stuck. And that's why it becomes a pain. But if we can remove it, like we would any injury, we clean it out, we let the emotion flow through us, then we've experienced it.
Exactly.
There was something else that I liked that you said. I'm trying to remember the wording. It was part of you, but now you decided who you would be today. Something like that, right?
Yep, the opportunity, it brought me where I am, but now I get to choose who I am.
Yes, and that's huge.
Yes.
So let's talk about that for a second, where when you started high school, 10th through 12th grade, you decided to go by a different name. Not a completely different, but a different version from, what was it, Kathy to Catherine?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So I guess there could be two sides to this, and maybe it affected you, so I want to hear from it. Did you change names to try to hide from the past, maybe a little bit, or did you change names to help give you a positive motivation to say, look, that doesn't need to define me anymore?
I changed names so that I felt the opportunity to change.
Mm-hmm.
So that basically to separate myself in a fashion from the Kathy of the past. Now, I knew that Kathy was still part of me, but this was my fresh break.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people, my father, for example, still calls me Kathy, even though when he and I started to make really good contact again, I was Catherine. But he still calls me Kathy. So that is still part of me. And people still, who knew me before I was 14 and 15 years old, still have all of those stories and all that recognition. And I can look at it now and say, yes, that's part of who I was. But it was really to create a whole new it was a fresh break. It wasn't necessarily, I'll never be anything like that, but it was, I'm going to be who I want to be. And nobody here knows the past hurt that I've had or the past responses that I've given, and I'm going to be new.
Mm-hmm. So here's something I want to make sure that listeners understand. Did this new name solve everything from the past?
Heavens no. It, it did not solve everything from the past. It did allow me to give a new perspective. Okay. And I still was the same person, but I was allowing myself to be all me in a new situation. Where as Kathy, I had hidden parts of myself, or at least I thought I was hiding parts of myself. Whether I did or did not, I can't say. But I certainly thought that I had hidden parts of myself as Kathy. And I had an image of myself as Kathy. And I still had that stuff. But as Catherine, I could say, you know what? None of these people know that emotional baggage. So let me create new connections. Let me create new friendships. Let me create new opportunities. And I didn't even completely let go of the people who knew me as Kathy. I just was able to shift and was able to change. And now the people who knew me as Kathy have been able to see my change and my growth. We as coaches and as therapists, my husband has a therapist background, we look at systems, and it's difficult for an individual to change and stay changed within the same system. The entire system has to change. By me becoming Catherine by choice, even though I was still Kathy and Catherine by birth, I was able to change myself enough that the system around me changed and adapted.
Very good. So real quick, and then I like the direction that we're going. A lot of people turn to behaviors in an attempt to resolve their emotional pain. But if they simply do that behavior and hope everything's going to work, it probably won't. And then the brain is going to need something stronger and stronger. So the point I wanted to make is, if somebody's listening and they say, wow, is it that simple? I just got to change my name and everything's good. My whole past is gone. No. But what you're telling us is something awesome too. We can choose a new behavior to replace an old one, because it's a positive motivation that then puts us on a trajectory to heal from our emotional pain. So where you said, hey, I'm now Catherine, and what does that mean to me? This is controlling my thoughts, which controls my emotions, and then I have positive behaviors. So Catherine, she is going to be this kind of person. She is going to accomplish these kinds of things. She is going to think this about herself instead of what Kathy did in the past. It's not that you don't like Kathy. It's not that you're ashamed of Kathy, but now it's, hey, I choose what I do now. Is that right?
Correct. Well put. Well summed up.
Very good. Other behaviors, because I really like this idea. And here's what came to my mind. I didn't do it for this purpose, but I think it applies. I used to be an HR director, an executive. Okay, that was a title or a name that I went by. I'm Ben, the HR director. Now I'm Ben, the speaker, coach, author, and all those fun things. So does that mean I'm running from something in the past? No. It means, hey, this is my passion. This is what I'm doing now. I'm confident, not conceited in it. Like what you said. And that's okay. It's okay to run with our passion and be proud of it. That is another element, that it's simply something that we all need to become more comfortable with.
Yes.
We can be comfortable in our own skins. We don't need to be so, let's say, sensitive to what others say. Maybe they're not comfortable in theirs, so they say, why are you going by Catherine now instead of Kathy? That's just weird. You say, because I love who I am, right?
Exactly.
Good. Tell us some more about what you've learned about this change, this new behavior, what you've learned and why it'll help others.
What I have learned is that every person's story matters. My story is different from other people's stories, and yet there are some situations and some emotional responses that line up with other people. And I have found more and more people who come to me to say, I'm just not that great. And in sincerity, my jaw drops and my eyes bulge, and I say, how can you see yourself as just not that great? And every person is a miracle, and every single experience that a person has can be turned to his or her benefit and the benefit of other people. It requires effort. It often requires help from other people to help you reframe or to help you work through the emotional pain, to help you experience it. It's a phenomenal transformative process. I've been through it myself. I continue to go through it because I'm far from perfect. That doesn't mean I can't help the people around me. And the people that I help are far from perfect. It doesn't mean that they don't help me. It is always an opportunity to build each other and to understand. I feel like I'm beginning to ramble, but it comes down to sometimes we have to look at ourselves as if we are looking at somebody else. I have worked with people who, for example, I worked with a woman who was the mother of the adopted mother, but the mother of a couple of children who had some real emotional and behavioral challenges. In addition to that, simultaneously, she was a nurse. She was a wife, and she was the high up in executive style leadership of a multi-level marketing organization where she had built herself up to a higher distributor level.
Mm-hmm.
And when she and I spoke, she did not see the wonderment of what she had done. So what I invited her to do was to write down a typical, quote unquote, typical day of what she was dealing with in even just one role. Is it the role of mom? Is it the role of multi-level marketing diva? Is it in the role of nurse? Is it in the role of wife? Is it in the role of volunteer? Because she also had some community volunteer opportunities. Just write down all of those things and then consider it in light of the other things that were going on in her life. And then consider if somebody else had a day like that and had those other things, how would you view that other person's efforts? And when you turn the tables like that, often you can see, well, I would have thought that that person was amazing. Okay. So own that and recognize that that was you. I like to have people tell that other person what you think of that person and how impressed you are, and then recognize that was you.
That's good.
It's, for me, it has been powerful. And then you can look at it. I love looking at people and saying, okay, so I see this and 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 this. And they say, no, okay, am I lying or am I telling the truth? You did say that you did this and that shows me this. You said you did that and that shows me this. And I'm like, wow, I just never looked at it that way. But look, look, you can do amazing things. And yes, life is hard. We all get to learn from it. We get to experience it, let it pass through us, and then let us help the people around us. And we can own those challenges and own the results of those challenges and own what we would do differently based on today's knowledge from what we did on yesterday's knowledge. So that if it comes back, we can do it differently. We don't always have to do everything the same way.
There you go. I like it. Well, Dr. Catherine, thank you for what you shared about reframe, rewrite, and redesign. That is another way of looking at having power over our emotions, choosing our new behavior, and we can choose the direction we want to go in. You've taught us some awesome things. How can people get a hold of you on social media if they'd like to connect?
On Facebook, I have a Reframe, Rewrite, Redesign Empowerment Group. It is a private group in which we build each other up and recognize the things that we do well. It is a place of empowerment. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Catherine Wiberg. It's linkedin.com/in/Catherine Wiberg. I could spell that, but I'm going to assume that you're going to put it in the notes so that people have that spelling correct. And then I also have a website, profitablealignment.com, because I believe when a person or an organization is in true alignment with himself, herself, or the organization with itself, then profits naturally follow, whether monetary or non-monetary. Profitablealignment.com.
Very good. Well, thank you. Yes, I'll definitely put those in the notes for the podcast. And thank you for joining, Dr. Catherine. This has been another episode of the Champions of Self podcast, and we'll talk to everybody later.
Thank you, man.